Hi, I'm Raj Kumar here again at Women Deliver 2016 with a good friend Carolyn Miles, who is CEO of Save the Children based in the US. And so many things we can talk about, Carolyn. So I thought maybe we just start with the World Humanitarian Summit. It's coming up next week. Obviously Save the Children is going to have a big presence there. And I think the key issue you're focused on is education for refugee kids. Why is that the kind of underserved issue or maybe the misunderstood issue of this humanitarian crisis that's getting so much attention?
Sure, well, I think people kind of think education in an emergency, that's probably not the highest order of business, but it actually is super important, particularly in the Syrian crisis. And if we look at, this has been going on now for 5 years,
Yeah.
it's going to be a big topic at the World Humanitarian Summit in Istanbul. And I spent actually some time in Greece a couple months ago and talking to families about why were they leaving now, after years of either living inside Syria or in Iraq or Lebanon. And I remember a dad said to me, I was sitting talking to he and his wife and their 2 kids, and he said, this is my 9-year-old and this is my 7-year-old. And my 7-year-old has never been to school.
Wow.
And my 9-year-old has been out of school now for 2 years. These are very well-educated people. They believe in education, and if their kids are not getting it, they're going to go somewhere where they can.
Any parent would do it, right? I mean, it's
Exactly.
so understandable.
This was right after they had crossed over the sea from Turkey to Greece. Very dangerous crossing, but we would do the same thing.
And so what is Save the Children looking to do about this issue?
So I think first we're just trying to change perception that this is somehow okay that kids are out of school for such an extended period of time. And really we're actually calling for something quite bold. We're saying we want to get 1 million refugee children into school, and we want all refugee kids to get back into school after a month, right? In any situation, any refugee situation or crisis. It's really aspirational, but it causes people to kind of sit back and think, okay, well, how could we actually get close to that? What would we have to do to change things to actually get these kids into school in these kinds of situations?
And until you have a target like that, it's really hard to know how well you're doing or how poorly you're faring, right?
Well, it is, except, we actually do track the number of kids that are in school in countries surrounding Syria, for example, and in other refugee situations, and it is something that we work on in all crisis situations. After Haiyan, for example, in the Philippines, within a week we had temporary schools set up and kids were going to school. Might have been a tent, might have been kind of a shelter by the side of the road, but it was the ability of kids to get back to a little bit of normalcy, get back into school, get a feeling that things were going to be okay. A lot of this is also psychological, particularly after a natural disaster, to get kids back into that.
Back in their normal routine, what they're used to.
That's
I know
right.
that's a lot of the discussion here at Women Deliver is about getting girls in school.
Yep.
What are you taking away from Women Deliver this year? What are the messages you're coming with? What are you learning so far?
Well, it's been a fantastic session and couple of days already. I think for us, we're looking at, as Save the Children, we're looking at making sure that we are reaching the most deprived kids and getting to those children that are at the end of the line. And sadly, most times when you look at the end of the line, it's a girl child.
Yeah.
That's who's at the end of the line. So whether you're talking about health, whether you're talking about education, whether you're talking about protection, trafficking, it's girls that are oftentimes at the end of the line. So one of the things I've taken out from the last couple days is there are lots and lots of different issues that we have to attack and that we have to say this is not right. But a lot of it is around girls, and a lot of our work now going forward is around those most deprived kids. So, things like early marriage, which I've been hearing a lot about and thinking a lot about, and Save the Children is actually doing a lot of work on early marriage in many countries. And if you think about it, it's an education issue, it's a protection issue, it's a health issue. If you can keep girls in school, they're going to delay age of marriage. If you can make sure that girls have kids later in life, the health of that child is going to be better when that child is born. It's all interconnected. And I think what I've really taken away is these things are interconnected. We can't, there's not a health child and an education child and a protection child. It's one child.
Right.
They have all of these needs, and how do we bring those things together in a better way and really focus on girls?
And when you look at the Sustainable Development Goals, I mean,
Yeah.
I love the way they're depicted as a circle with the rainbow of colors because they're
Yeah.
all connected.
They are.
Because in the end, it's a person's life or it's a community. All these things come together. Where are you? We're just the beginning of these new
That's right.
goals. How do you think it's going so far? What are the things that you're kind of concerned about, or the challenges you
Yeah.
see looking ahead? That's a lot of the conversation here.
Yeah, I mean, I think the great thing is we had 193 countries that signed off on these goals. That is fantastic. There were some people that thought that was never going to happen. They are universal, so developed countries, developing countries, we all signed up to them. The real issue, I think, is inequality. If you look through the thread that goes through all the Sustainable Development Goals, is that issue of inequality, and that's going to be a hard one to tackle. I think there's a couple of key things in this first year. One is financing, and there was the Financing for Development Conference that happened in Addis earlier this year. I think some great outcomes, but it's been a little quiet since then, so how do we make sure that we get that financing conversation back up again, especially as we go into the UN General Assembly in September? Because without the resources, we can all talk about it.
Yeah.
It isn't going to happen.
Well, and with the migration crisis in Europe
That's
and
right.
the change in the political culture in lots of countries, including our own, you can think, well, are we going to have the support that we've been able to rely on for so long for foreign assistance?
Well, and I think there are new ways of financing. So a lot of that session was about bringing new financing to the table, whether that's social impact bonds, whether that's the private sector, whether that's taxes in developing countries. Can there be some kind of a tax system in developing countries that actually does generate enough revenue to get kids into school, to make sure that moms are not dying in childbirth, the very basics, right? And it is possible. I mean,
I think there's some good examples of that.
There are some great
countries that are
examples.
starting to invest in their own health and education systems.
That's right. So the financing is really key. I think the data, we've heard a lot about the data revolution or the need for the data revolution while we've been here at Women Deliver. It's hard to reach the goals if you don't exactly know where the field is. So getting that baseline, understanding where in a lot of detail, inside a country, where are those people who are missing out, those kids, particularly for us, that are missing out. Making sure that we have that data so we can use it, so we can drive it to something that looks better.
Yeah,
That's
Melinda Gates was
really
making
important.
that point today with her big announcement of $80 million for data.
And it's great to see Gates standing up on that data.
Yeah, I think
issue.
it sends a real statement. In addition to the money, it sends a statement to the community.
Exactly.
And you've got a campaign to Save the Children about getting every last child, right?
That's right.
And I guess that's in like resource poor settings, that's in conflict zones. If we want to get to the global goals, that's maybe where we'll miss them.
That's right. And it is about, we have said specifically in this campaign, which is called Every Last Child, that we're going to get to the most deprived kids anywhere, and that includes places like the United States, places like the UK, places like Pakistan, places like Nepal, places like Sierra Leone. How do we reach that child? And again, as I said, oftentimes that child is a girl.
Yeah.
So how do we make sure that we are getting that equity as we go, and how do we get to those poorest communities? It's going to be hard because those are expensive places to go.
Right.
They are difficult, dangerous places to go. The countries with the most deprived kids are fragile states. They're not stable places, but we've basically said, if we can't do that, we're not going to get to these goals that we talk about. We just won't get there.
Yeah, if you look at the places where there isn't a large presence of the NGO community or not a lot of foreign assistance or development funding, there's a good reason, usually, for why. It's a hard place to go. It's a hard place to work. So this is a call to action, not just for the development community in general, but for your own organization internally. What do you think it'll mean for Save the Children as you go forward and try to achieve this?
Well, I mean, I think one thing that it means, we're looking at places like Central African Republic and the DRC and South Sudan. It means we have to be really willing to take some more risks. That can be tough as a big global organization. We have to be willing to do that. But I think we've said we can do that. It won't just be about us, though. We need lots of people who we're working with. Really empowering local communities. That is going to be super important. It's already been important in the last 5 years. It's going to be even more important to do that, to make sure that, again, in that last mile, we have people who know what to do and are there on the ground, whether that's Save the Children people or whether it's people that we've trained in those communities. And that's going to be, I think, really important.
I think it could be a really big shift for the development community in that the UK has said 50% of their aid should go to conflict or fragile states. you're talking about that's where a lot of the challenge is going to be.
That's right.
So the community in general has got to get more oriented to some of the most difficult places in the world, some of the places that are really not even that safe or secure to go and
That's
work.
right. That's right. And I think that's going to be a big topic at the World Humanitarian Summit. I think lots of people are going to be talking about the challenges, and I think it probably takes really thinking about the humanitarian system as we know it and saying, is this really the right way to do this? Can we change the system? Do we need to change the system? You know, there's a lot that we can learn from the private sector. I think there are many companies in the world where they do go into difficult places where they know how to do the logistics, for example, of doing that. We work a lot with people like UPS.
Yeah.
Their business is to go anywhere, basically,
right.
with a package. So learning from them, I think, is also really important. And that includes the local private sector, so not just big multinationals, but local businesses that are, you know, in fact, running businesses in these places and working with them to say, how do we solve these problems together?
Yeah, UPS is a real leader in the humanitarian space, but there are not that many companies that are there yet.
No.
And we kind of need to be more open to finding ways to work with the private sector, it seems like.
Exactly. And I think, you know, what happens typically on these kind of natural disasters is everybody responds, right? You have a tsunami or an earthquake and everybody responds, including the corporate sector. But these slow burn, kind of ongoing conflict settings, that is a really hard one. Although, you know, we have seen some of our best corporate partners step up on Syria, for example. And, you know, that probably never would have happened in the past. So they are understanding.
For me, coming to a conference like this, one of the things I take away is the energy, the inspiration that you get from meeting all these incredible people from all over the world doing amazing things. We're talking about some tough issues, but at least for me, it seems like there really is light at the end of this tunnel, right? I mean, how do you feel? You're someone who travels all over the world. You see some of the most difficult circumstances that kids are going through.
Yes. Yeah, I think this, and I was talking to some people who had been over the years, and it's really grown. Women Deliver has really become a very big global conference. And I think what comes out of things like this, you know, we can all come to Copenhagen, and it's nice, but what comes out of this is new partnerships, right? New people that are working on issues that you're working on where you can actually come together and, you know, 2 + 2 can equal 6 rather than 4. So that's a great thing that I think comes out of meetings like this. And I do feel like there is this recognition that there's a new, you know, we had great progress under the Millennium Development Goals. It's not, you know, child survival, great example,
results,
right?
yeah.
We've cut the death rate of kids under the age of 5 in half since 1990, right? Saved 6 million children a year since 1990. But there's still 6 million that are dying of things that we know how to prevent. And those are going to be the hardest to reach. Those are going to be the kids that are at the very end of the line, and we need to put everybody's work towards making sure that we save those children's lives.
Well, that's an important message. It's one we'll end on, but thank you so much for all the great work you and Save the Children does.
Great.
Thanks for being part of this.
Thank you, Raj.